Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Shawna Khalafi. This is a live look tonight at Kerrville, Texas, where that tragic flooding happened over the summer, where 25 girls and 2 teenage counselors died in catastrophic flooding. This was back in July at Camp Mystic, and now several families have filed lawsuits. We have Houston Chronicle reporter Nusaiba Mizan, who has been covering this case and speaking to some of the families affected. So tell me, how do these lawsuits range, and what exactly are they alleging happened in this flooding?
Thanks. There are at least 4 lawsuits that families have filed. Essentially, the lawsuits argue that the Camp Mystic prioritized profits over safety and had the opportunity to relocate cabins during a major expansion 6 years ago and opted not to. That's the crux of a lot of the lawsuits that was filed on Monday.
And you spoke to the family of one of those victims. Can you tell me what they're saying now after so many months? Of course, they are still dealing with this tragic loss. What exactly are you hearing from the families that have been affected?
Yeah, I spoke with the Gettin family. Mr. and Mrs. Gettin's daughter, Ellen Gettin, had died. She was a 9-year-old who had died in Bubble Inn, which had some of the youngest campers at Camp Mystic. They're accusing the camp of negligence and gross negligence after losing their daughter. And since their initial filing, at least 5 other families have joined them, making a total of 6 families on that lawsuit.
And like you said, that lawsuit is alleging that the camp failed to take the necessary steps to protect the campers as those floodwaters were approaching. So it talks about some of the notifications that was coming in as the floodwaters were rising. What allegations is this lawsuit making, and how could this have been prevented according to the families and that lawsuit?
Yeah, the lawsuit covers several facets. One being that there was the opportunity to relocate cabins from flood zones during a major construction expansion 6 years ago. The lawsuit alleges that by not relocating cabins and by appealing to the federal government to remove 100-year floodplain designations, that that the camp would have lower insurance costs as well as have looser or less tighter regulations if they were to expand in the future. Now, the camp says that that there were no cabins on the floodplain, noting that there was an update in the maps in 2013, according to them, and had said camp legal representation had said that the maps are quote unquote outdated.
And since this happened, of course, this had a big effect on the Texas state as a whole, the community around Kerrville. So what has been done since this flooding in July to prevent something like this from happening again in the future?
Yeah, legislation has passed in order to implement changes such as the installation of outdoor warning systems, requiring residential youth camps to have emergency protocols, protocols to communicate with first responders, orientations for campers, and that legislation passed in September.
And we do have video of Greg Abbott signing that legislation. We're going to play that out in just a moment. Is there anything else that you got from your conversation with the Gettin family that you would like to add? Anything that they want to make sure people know about their child or about this situation, this tragic situation at Camp Mystic?
Yeah, ultimately, the Gettin family and other families are seeking transparency and accountability, they say, from the camp. They're seeking to prevent this from happening to any other child who's staying at a residential youth camp in the area.
Yeah, a tragic story there in Texas. Again, 6 families now suing Camp Mystic, saying that this deadly flooding situation could have been prevented. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And we have this tweet from the Houston Chronicle as well, saying, according to the lawsuit, the death of Ellen Getton and other Mystic campers could have been prevented because of flood designations and notifications before that disaster. Now, we just mentioned new legislation that was signed by Abbott following this tragic flooding situation in July. Let's listen to that.
Who goes to camp should come home to their families. No parent should ever have to outlive their child or endure this kind of loss. So today, through these laws, we are doing more than just changing campgrounds in Texas. We are changing the future for our children and for their families.
Our partners at Fox 7 in Austin also spoke to an attorney representing another one of those victims, an 8-year-old girl who died in the flooding last July at Camp Mystic. Let's listen to that story.
Before the floodwaters started to recede on the Guadalupe River, claims were already being made that no one could have predicted such a tragic event would take place. But what happened was no act of God, according to Austin attorney Randy Howery.
A lot of excuses are being made, even by Mystic, after the fact. What we know is that they didn't do things the right way. They had no policies and procedures in place. They had no evacuation plan in place.
Howery represents 8-year-old Eloise Lulu Peck in the lawsuit that he filed for her family. An entry from the 8-year-old's sketchbook was included. She indicated a fear of thunderstorms, darkness, wrote the words natural disasters, flood, and included a drawing of water surging into buildings. That entry was done just a few weeks before Lulu left for Camp Mystic.
When these folks, like my clients, dropped their little girls off at camp, they expected they would have a good experience. They would have fun, be taken care of, make lifelong friends. They did not expect that they would not be able to pick up their kids except to take them to a funeral home. And it's just uncalled for. And we certainly hope that a jury ultimately in this case holds this camp accountable for their conduct that night, and hope that the message is don't let this happen again anytime, any place, anywhere.
The attorney for Camp Mystic is San Antonio attorney Jeff Ray. In response to the lawsuits that have been filed, Ray issued a statement that read in part, "We intend to demonstrate and prove that this sudden surge of floodwaters far exceeded any previous flood in the area by several magnitudes, that it was unexpected, and that no adequate warning systems existed in the area." Ray went on to say, "We disagree with several accusations and misinformation in the legal filings regarding the actions of Camp Mystic and Dick Eastland, who lost his life as well. We will thoroughly respond to these accusations in due course." The Peck lawsuit is one of 3 that have been filed since the flooding. Each accused the camp owners of negligence, citing past FEMA flood maps that showed cabins in high-risk areas, an inadequate disaster plan, as well as failing to respond to advisories and warnings before the flooding happened.
At the end of the day, this is the classic argument that they placed profits over safety.
According to Peck's lawsuit, Camp Mystic continued to play Russian roulette with the lives of the little girls.
That was the latest on the lawsuits that have come about after the deadly flooding in Kerrville, Texas, where 25 girls and 2 teenage counselors were killed when flooding hit Camp Mystic. Again, 6 families now joining in lawsuits against the camp, saying that this was preventable. Let's take another break.